Hannah J Welton. Welcome to Drama Mamas. I'm going to introduce us because we've not really met. So my name is Kira and this is Gemma.
We actually have a little connection, and that is 10 years ago. This was the magazine that I was editor of, and you were on the cover, which was like one of my favorite issues.
Crazy. So crazy. I saw on your Instagram, I think it was just like a couple days ago, I had noticed you liked a post of mine. And so I clicked it. And then I saw in your bio, I think I saw where it said like former editor of Drummer. And I was wondering if you were there when I was on the cover, because it's crazy how our paths crossed all those years ago. And here we are now. And you said 10 years?
Yeah, sadly, 10 years.
I can't, it's hard to fathom that it's been that long, since like even just working with Prince. And it's been over 10 years since we first met him and started working with him. But a decade is crazy to me. It's super crazy. So, wow. Well, it's nice to finally meet you,
Yeah, me
both
too.
of you, still virtually, but it feels better that it's FaceTime. And thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Oh, thank you for being here. I know that nap time is a precious time, like you
Yeah.
said, so we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Um, and I wanted to firstly congratulate you on your Back to Basics project. The video that I've seen it just looks so cool. It's so refreshing. It's such a unique take. And so, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So back to basics. It's actually conceptually, it's been in the works for the last couple years now, and it really was a reckoning of sorts and reintroducing myself to myself. You know, there's when you become a mother, and so much of your life before motherhood is dedicated to music day in, day out. You're pursuing your career, you're grinding, you're gigging, rehearsing, meeting people, networking. And I didn't necessarily, I mean, I started working with Prince at 22, so I was still super young. And so for that whole part of my life all to be right before motherhood, when I became a mother, you know how it goes. You know, you dedicate yourself, and all of your heart's desires and passions turn toward your children in some form or fashion. Even if you still have your own dreams and desires, the lens that you see those dreams through and the routes to get there, you consider your children first and foremost before everything else. And that's the way that it should be. But after becoming a mom and then having 2 and 3 and 4 and now 5 kids in 8 years, um, you know, there has been a lot of self-discovery and just this journey of how to grow and love myself now as a 34-year-old mother versus the 22-year-old girl who was bright-eyed and touring the world and didn't necessarily have like major obligations outside of herself and her career. Joshua and I were married at that point too, but still very young, and we were together and just like living it up, touring the world with Prince. So now I've taken time off to focus on my family, and we just really felt like Joshua and I both, he actually felt it before I did, and I resisted for quite some time because I really sank into motherhood. But he was like, babe, don't you miss the drums? Don't you want to play? Don't you want to, you know, get back to it in some way? And I was really resistant for honestly some years. And then finally, I would say in 2020, I started to kind of feel desire to come back for the drums, to play in some form or fashion, to start, you know, just diving back into music in some way. But even still, now we're in 2025 and I'm just now releasing something, anything. And so Back to Basics really is a breakdown of my life. I mean, we go through what it was like for me starting to play the drums as a little girl in the 90s and through the ups and downs of my career, aspirations, successes and failures. And then we also focus on what it was like for me to come back to the drums after Prince passed, and also after becoming a mom, because I went through those two major life transitions at the same time. And so with Back to Basics, it's a very introspective project that I really open up about, you know, personally, mental challenges and struggles, insecurities, and then also external opposition that I've experienced as well. And just the beauty of persistence and perseverance and passion when you're just dedicated to what you know you're supposed to do, what you're called to do. And so it's a lot of backstory and my journey, but then also each episode, at the end of the episodes, I'll break down either a tip or a trick or give a little bit of a lesson on whatever each episode is focused on topically. I'll share some insights too from a playing perspective on different tips and tricks that have helped me throughout my career on the different topics that we're talking about.
You call it a docu-lesson series, which I find a really cool format to take. Why did you choose it like that exactly?
Thank you. That actually, so my husband, this was all produced and directed, created, edited, shot. Everything was in-house, just between Joshua, my husband, and myself. And as we were initially starting Back to Basics, the vision for it was not actually what we ended up with. I had a very much sort of cut and dry, I want to do lessons on bing, bang, boom topics, and just basically teach. So initially the episodes were maybe 10 minutes, possibly 12 minutes, the longest. Because there wasn't this aspect of personal connection to the episodes. It was just more like a lesson. Okay, so you want to learn how to set up your drum set. Here's how you do it. Boom. Okay, let's talk about technique. Hold your sticks like this. Boom. And so there wasn't a lot of connectivity from the heart and my personal story and journey. And after we recorded a few episodes, we were almost done, and it was beautiful product and what we came out with. But Joshua actually was the one that brought in this idea of it not necessarily feeling like a personal sort of reintroduction or getting connection with the listeners, the viewers, the people that would want to sit and actually take the lesson or go through the series. And so he was like, how cool would it be if we did something totally different, never done before? And this is the brilliance of Joshua. And he's like, what about a docu-lesson? And so he coined that term. I will give him all that credit because he's absolutely brilliant. He really is. And so I'm blessed to have him in my corner and under my roof. But he came up with that idea of starting it like a documentary so that people can get to know me now. I think I grew up in this industry. So from when I was 7 years old up until all the way working with Prince, I was 26 when he passed, or was about to turn 26. For that long, I was in the industry, I was present, I was going to all the NAMM shows and PASIC and doing all the things. And so people knew who I was then. But 8 years of motherhood, you know, there's so much growth that happens where who I was then is nowhere near who I am now. There are similarities and certain things in character and stuff like that are the same. But I mean, you change and grow so much when you get pregnant, you deliver, you raise these babies, you're nursing them. You're like, how did I even, this is a miracle, you know, and now you're keeping them alive and you just learn so much about life and your perspective changes. So it was really important to me to not just come out and throw out content for the sake of throwing out content, but actually reintroduce myself for who I am now and the lessons that I've learned to now, this present day. And I really wanted to make sure that I was connecting with people at a different level and a deeper level, because I don't feel like, especially in the music industry, and then, you know, at a more specific level, the drum industry, I think we're just now starting to cross the threshold of people really talking about mental health and your personal health and how important it is to take care of yourself spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically. And so those are the types of things that I break down in Back to Basics. I talk about your mental health. I talk about your physical health, your posture, how to sit behind the drums, and how important it is to work out and stretch and really pour into your body in a healthy way so that it can deliver the way you want it to behind the drums when you're working. And there's so much of that behind the scenes that's so important, but I don't feel like we talk about that enough and we raise enough awareness. A lot of it is, okay, so you want to learn how to play the drums? Here you go. This is how you hold the sticks. Here's this groove, here's that groove, and that's all great. And it's so important. But I think that there are other things that are just as important that don't get enough light shed upon them. And so that's what I'm hoping to do with Back to Basics.
I'm excited. It's so, so cool. Um,
Thank you.
you said that it took you a while to decide, right, I'm going to do this. What was
Yeah.
the point where you were like, I'm ready? Do you remember?
Yes. So I am a very spiritual person. I love the Lord. I love Jesus so much with all my heart. And there was actually a moment in my prayer time where I was just really venting with God and telling him that I feel this deeper draw within me to pursue more, to build more, to create more. And I know that, I am supposed to play the drums. I've got, like I've just got certain gifts and talents that I know are for a reason and for a purpose. And for a very long time after becoming a mom, I let them lie dormant. I basically just left them by the wayside. And I didn't want to neglect what I knew was very intentional and purposeful in my life any longer. So there was the internal drawing where I just knew something needed to be done. And that's kind of what kicked it into gear, because for a long time after Prince passed, I didn't miss the drums. I really didn't. He passed, and then I became a mom just a few months later. Well, I say that. I believe that when it comes to like pregnancy and everything, a lot of people say expectant mothers or soon to be mothers. But if you are pregnant, there is stuff going on in your body. Your journey in motherhood has already begun. So Azaria was born a few months after Prince passed, but I would say my journey into motherhood had already begun. However, when I became a mom after he passed, I didn't miss the drums. Like I had no desire to play, which was weird for me. And so when I felt that desire kicking in, like I said, in 2020, that was the first like, oh, where did that come from? And however, I also dealt with a lot of fear and doubt in myself because of the fact that 8 years, well, at that point, I think it was only 4 years, had gone by, but social media and the music industry and just the drum, like it had shifted so much since I had taken the break in 2016. And so I fell into a lot of comparison and feeling like the industry is totally different. I don't know if I fit the way that things are working now. What do I have to offer? What do I have to say? And are people even still checking for me? Do they even want to hear from me at this point? And so I battled with that insecurity and just self-doubt for some years. And then it finally got to a point where I think the straw that broke the camel's back was just last year, early last year, I would say last January, just sitting with Joshua and talking to him about how like I'm an adult, like I'm a grown woman, a mother, a wife, but I want to contribute to our family in more ways. So I wanted to also to be able to contribute financially and actually experience that level of partnership with Joshua that I hadn't experienced since working with Prince, because after that, he was the main breadwinner and he's incredible. I love him for it. And he's taken really great care of us. But at this point now, 8 years have gone by and I haven't partnered with him in that way. And so I wanted to be able to contribute in that way as well. And I feel like all those different factors coupled together is what created the turning point of, okay, we need to do this. I want to get this done from start to finish, and no more procrastination, no more fighting. I'm just going to get it done.
I kind of want to go back a bit now to when you started. So you said that you were 7 when you started playing drums, and that you spent most of your life like growing up and being in the music industry already. Can you tell us a little bit about early Hannah and the drums?
Yeah, totally. And I love this. So just as a sidebar and maybe a shameless plug, the first episode of Back to Basics is like incredible. I cry every time because I really get into some detail about those early years and those early days as a little girl. But I actually started performing when I was 3. I was a dancer. And so I just loved to be on stage and perform and entertain, and just, oh my gosh, I would eat it up as a little girl. And then discovered the drums at 7. Growing up in Louisville, Kentucky, there was a percussion group that was based out of the school that I went to, called the Fabulous Leopard Percussionists. And my elementary school teacher, Diane Downs, she's incredible. She still is working with the Leopards in Louisville, and she just does amazing work with children. But if you were in her class, just her 3rd grade classroom, you automatically learned how to play the drums, because she kind of stumbled upon this too in her classroom closet years before I was there. I think it was in the 80s, maybe. I could be wrong. She just found a few percussion instruments in her classroom closet and decided to learn how to play them and teach the kids how to play. And I think she was a trombone player. So a musician, but not a percussionist herself. She stumbled upon these percussion instruments, taught the kids to play. And then years later, now they're a massive group of kids, endorsements, sponsors, gigging around the country. Like, it's an amazing, amazing organization. And so that's how I learned. I was in Diane's 3rd grade class, and after we did our reading assignments or certain classroom assignments, we'd have some downtime to learn how to play the drums. And so we would jam to kill time and blow off steam. And if you wanted to audition to be a part of the Leopards, you could. And so I auditioned, I got into the group. And so at 7 years old, I started gigging around Louisville. And then eventually we went to Disney World and different places around the country to perform. And we learned all these songs by ear. So we would play songs like Take the A Train, and then we'd play Frankenstein, and then we'd play Don't You Worry About a Thing, and Oh Lowrider, Oya Como Va, and all these different parts we would learn by ear. So we would learn the drum set parts, and we'd learn the melody, the backgrounds, the bass line. We'd learn the percussion parts, and she would place you on different instruments for different songs. So we would get a really great experience on learning all these different types of percussion instruments very early on. And so that is really how I got started, learning by ear in a group of 30 kids gigging around Kentucky mainly, but also, certain pockets of the states here and there. And I just fell in love with it. So that's how I got started.
We're going to put your Back to Basics details with the episode, so you can plug as much as you like, because we think it's awesome. But
I also want to make sure that I send you guys a link to it, like a free access link, so that you guys can actually see it. Because I want to share it, and I want to get your feedback and see how you connect with it as well, especially as mothers. I think it's a really cool perspective to get that's not out there a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I remember years ago, I was trying to find the video yesterday of seeing you on YouTube, and I don't know what the video was, but I remember seeing you years ago, and I was just like, yes, because I didn't see any other girl drummers, because it was just me and Gemma, or wherever she is, me and Gemma. But what I was wondering was there a moment where it became a career versus like, I'm just having fun learning drums and doing all of these experiences? Was there a moment where you're like, actually, this is going to be my job?
I trying to think. I feel like, and this may sound really cliche, but I feel like from the get-go, I knew because I had already been performing since I was 3. And I'm one of 6 kids. My dad is a musician. My mom is like super mom. She was the one running us to dance and sports and music and everything. So we had a really supportive, just like our parents were a really great support system. But me and all my siblings were into music and dance and performance of some sort of fashion throughout growing up. So I feel like I was literally destined to perform and I always knew it. Now, did I have the maturity to know like this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? Maybe not early on, but I knew that I loved it and wanted to play forever. And so I never, even with my dad, I remember being in high school at this point. Well, let me just, to answer your question, I probably got really serious about it with my dad when I was 12. Because that's when my parents split when I was that age. And then I moved with him from Louisville to Chicago. And that's where we decided to join a blues band together. And that's when I started to get really professional work and gigs. And I started to actually make money playing professionally in a band. And so 12 was probably when it crossed over, when it came to gig experience. But like I said, had been gigging with the Leopards literally from age 7. So 12 was probably that switch over. But yeah, I always knew. And I remember telling my dad in high school, they'll have career fairs and stuff, and different people will come and talk to you about their jobs and what they do. And I love detectives and like forensic science and stuff. So I remember talking to my dad about, well, it's good to have a plan B. What if I went to college and double majored and studied music and this just to have something to fall back on? And he bit into my tail so hard that day. He's like, you don't need a plan B. You focus and you work and you will be a successful musician. Da, da, da. Because he was a trumpet player. And so he knew, like he saw it in me sometimes, even when I didn't see it in myself. And I am so grateful for that because it's so important for all of us to have that support system that's gonna grab you by the collar when you're not thinking rationally sometimes. And so I remember he was like, you don't need a plan B. I was like, okay, you're right. And so, I have been gigging professionally since I was 12 years old. And there's only been one time where I've had a real job. And it was right when Joshua and I got married and moved to Atlanta. I worked for literally like 3 months at a tanning salon. And that's it. Really grateful and really blessed to be able to work as a musician my whole life. But yeah, it's something that I just always knew deep down, like, this is it. This is it.
Prince discovered you on YouTube when you were just 22. Can you tell us about what happened after that?
So the process specifically, okay. So I reached out, or no, he had his manager reach out to me at the time with a super cryptic email that basically said, hey, I work for a very well-known musician and he's seen some of your stuff on YouTube and was wondering if you'd be interested in auditioning in an up-and-coming project he has. But before we give you any more details, we need to know if you can keep a secret. Everything we share with you would be confidential. And so this was 2012. And so like Facebook and things, like the following was starting to really increase, traction was starting to really develop. And so I was starting to get really weird messages in my DMs and in my inboxes and stuff like that. And so a lot of times my dad and I, because he would regulate some of the social media stuff too. We'd work together on that. So a lot of times we would agree, like, let's not respond to these types of messages because it's not good for anybody. So, but when I saw that email, for whatever reason, I decided to write back and basically said, I'm flattered you enjoy my work. yes, I could keep a secret, but before I commit to anything, I need to know more information. She responds back the next day, and I'm in church. This was after church service. Joshua and I were also involved with the teen ministry. And so we were in rehearsals with the teen ministry, praise and worship, and drama, and all that sort of stuff. And so I'm at church, and I see this email come through. And she said, okay, great. Well, I work for Prince, and he was wondering if you could send some videos of you drumming to these songs for a part of an audition. And I freaked out. I started running around the church like a crazy person because even if it wasn't real, I had just been through so much at that point in my career where it was like promises or opportunities and then they would fall through. And so for the fact that this was even a potentiality for me was really huge. And it was like so exciting to get a win, you know? And so I was running around, I was looking for Joshua. Where's my husband? Have you seen him? I finally find him and I showed him, and turns out it was real. And it was life changing. It was life changing. So that was that. It was literally an email correspondence, and then they sent me 3 songs to record some drum videos to. They asked if I could sing as well, so I sent a video of me singing, and then the next phase of the audition process was flying me out to Paisley.
What was the turnaround time like from the email to you sending the videos?
Oh,
Was
it,
it
it
quite
all
quick?
happened. Yes. When we knew, like when it was Prince, it was like, okay, we have to hop on this before, time, the train keeps rolling. So yeah, it was let's see. We just broke this down the other day because it was actually right before my 21st birthday. They emailed me the end of June. I was out there in person by like the first or second weekend of July.
Oh,
It was like
wow.
July 12th, however that weekend lined up. And so I think it was like June 23rd, the first email came. Look at me, get it, memory. Uh, June 23rd, because it was right before my birthday, which is the 29th. So it was just a couple weeks of email exchange. Okay, great. Can you send this song? Okay, great. Do you sing? Okay, great. Can you fly out to Paisley? Here's the dates. And so it was a really quick process.
And how much did your life change day to day once you got the gig? Was it just like transformation done?
100%. 100%. So like on every level. So Joshua and I, when we got married, it was October 8th of 2011. And we were 21, so young. And look, if you would have asked us back then, though, we would tell you we were the most mature. But we look back now and we just laugh at how young we really were, because 21-year-olds are just young, and it's okay. We just needed to experience more life. But at that point, like, we moved to Atlanta to pursue music. We had some connections and friends down there, wanted a change of scenery, as we're starting our life together. And so we went through it. It was 9 months that we were married before we got a call from Prince. And so from October basically to the next July, we had moved like 5 times. Our stuff was broken into. We just went through so much opposition. And Joshua, like, this was also the season where I worked at the tanning salon, and it was just brutal for me to be like on someone's punch clock. As a kid who like grew up playing music, and like, it was, and honestly, I know maybe hearing me talk about that, it's like so trivial for some people who, like, that is their day to day. It is their life. They go in, they punch a clock, they're on someone else's timeline. And so, like, I don't want to come off insensitive to people that still live that lifestyle and choose to do so, whether it's because it's the job that they love or they're providing for their family, whatever the case is. I just know for me, as an immature 21-year-old, I was very affected by being on someone's, like, having to do what someone else said. And it wasn't about my career, though. You know what I mean? Every time I was there, it was taking away from practice time, gig time, travel time, all the things. And so we were really going through it in 2011 and early 2012, struggling financially, living in someone else's home. Our car broke down, so we didn't have a car. We're sharing a car with other adults, trying to get to our jobs. And it was just a really tough season. And then we get this email and I start working with Prince, and all of a sudden we go from living under someone else's roof, not having our own car, to me getting thousands of dollars a week on salary working with Prince, being flown out, not having to pay for our own flights, not having to pay for our own hotel, but being flown out, being paid for our time, and like making great money. So coming from like nothing and really struggling to overnight, the first thing that I worked on with him was the Rock and Roll Love Affair video. And, you know, like it was just a really drastic change, because I'm on these massive music video sets, playing with arguably the greatest entertainer of all time. And he is incredible. I wake up, Joshua and I, the first time I went out there and met Prince for the audition, it was just me. Then he flew Joshua out with me every other time. And him and Joshua were super close and super connected from the get-go. And I remember, I think it was August was when my press release was put out that I had joined the NPG. And Prince didn't tell me he was going to do that, though. And so that's what was cool about working with Prince, is it really was so spontaneous. You did not know where you were going to be, where you were going to go, what was going to happen any given day. And so Joshua and I are in the hotel, and we wake up one morning, and all of a sudden our Facebooks, text messages, Twitters, like everything is going crazy on our phones. And turns out Joshua was like, babe. And there was a press release put out that I had joined the band, and overnight, everything was different. Everything was different. I remember we were going to church in Chicago, and someone recognized me because I was Prince's drummer. And it was just very new. It was crazy to starting to get recognized in places that I just totally didn't even expect to be recognized. You know, social media, numbers and interviews, and then not to mention like the level of musicianship, the friends that I'm making, relationships that are being established in this band, working with like the best people in the industry, and meeting, you know, just really incredible musicians, and touring and flying in private jets, staying in 5-star hotels, having private chefs cooking, personal trainer. Like, it was overnight different, and it really changed our lives.
And out of curiosity, when you were in the band, how free were you to pursue other projects, or was it a case of once you're in Prince's band, that's
Yeah, that was it.
it?
That was it. So, you know, it was, that's funny. Joshua and I we just made a joke about this right before this interview. But, yeah, when you come into the Prince world, as one of his musicians, it's different. Now, if you were like, a singer or an artist with your own sort of music and catalog and passions, and he brought you into Paisley, it was like, okay, you can jam with my band and blah blah blah, but you still kind of have your own thing for the most part. But as a musician, if you came in to work with Prince and be a part of his bands, like that was your job. That's what you did. And honestly, we wouldn't have even had time to do other things, if we wanted to. And I say that though because Third Eye Girl was a little bit different. We pretty much lived at the hotel, and out here at Paisley for the 4 years that we were all together. The New Power generation was a little bit different because the big band didn't gig all the time. It was more like if he did like a huge festival, or if it was like a private event where someone requested the big band. It was more like here and there. It wasn't like his consistent touring band by the time I came around and we started Third Eye Girl. But so with the big band, that was more spot dates and stuff like that, where the other musicians, they did have other gigs and bands and stuff that they played in throughout the year. With the Third Eye Girl unit, we were all consistently at Paisley from dusk till dawn, all day, every day, living together, basically, jamming, rehearsing, writing, recording, playing ping pong, going to the movies. Like that is what we did. And so there weren't any side projects or anything like that.
That sounds like such a dream, doesn't it? You must have just wondered if you were going to wake up and find that it wasn't real.
Oh my gosh, it was incredible. It was incredible. I mean, it you hear so many stories about Prince, right? And people talk about how he was a ninja and he just floated places and like clouds of smoke followed him everywhere he went, because he really was just so sensational in that way. But at the same time was also incredibly humble, and hospitable and sweet and generous. And when he felt safe, I think is the key there. When he felt safe to open up to you and bring you into his world, man, you were family. And so it really, I can really only speak from my experience with Third Eye Girl, but we truly were a family. It was like this tight familial unit, with me, Donna, Ida, Joshua, my husband, Trevor, Donna's husband, and Prince, and then like a couple other people as well. But it was just so sweet, and we had a blast. It didn't matter what we were doing. We could have been jamming, rehearsing, recording, playing ping pong during our downtime. Prince would, we would be working. Any given day could have been like, okay, let's sleep, wake up, we get into Paisley. He would send an email like, doors are open, doors are unlocked, maybe like 1 o'clock call time. Go in, rehearse. Now that day we could also be recording something. And then we break for dinner, come back after dinner, jam some more. And a lot of the times it would be me and the girls rehearsing during the day before dinner. And then after dinner, Prince would come in and we would jam whatever was on the rehearsal list with him. But sometimes he would also come in during rehearsal before dinner. And so you just never really knew. It was really loose, but still like goal oriented. And then we would jam maybe until 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 a.m. And then he would be like, you guys want to go to the movies? You want to go see this movie? And we'd be like, yeah. So he would rent out the whole theater, and it would literally just be us showing up at the movies in our jammies at like 12:30 in the morning. And, they would have the platter of like popcorn and drinks and candy, like grab whatever you want. Like he would, those types of experiences happened often because that's just what he did for his people. And so it was an incredible experience.
It must have been absolutely devastating to then lose him, not only as a friend, but also your job security. Like as quickly as all of that appeared, it was then taken away. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. Because Joshua and I, so the first 2 years from 2012 to 2014, the way that a lot of the travel and stuff worked with Prince was like one-way tickets. So we were living in Atlanta when he discovered me. And then eventually after 9 months, Joshua also started working with him. And at that, for travel for those first couple years, it was like one-way tickets. And then you just basically pack everything because you don't know how long you're going to be there. And then you get flown home when the work is done. After about 2 years of that, he said, we need to start thinking about, Prince said, we had a band meeting and he was like, we need to start thinking about living where we work. And so that was the cue for all of us to basically figure out, finding homes or whatever the case is here locally in Minnesota. But in a private conversation with Joshua, They were working in the studio, and Prince basically told Joshua that we could have one of his homes that he had. And so we ended up moving into one of his homes from 2014 up until he passed. And so, yes, we lost job security, but I was also pregnant. And we were welcoming our first child and starting our family, living in one of his homes that now he is not here to oversee and manage the situation. And so we also had to move, and that was a really tough situation to navigate, because the news of his passing came, which was traumatic in and of itself. Then we're essentially getting kicked out of a home that was given to us to stay in, while also managing a newborn and starting our family. And so there were a lot of major adjustments and transitions all at the same time. We always say, like, 2016 was the worst year and the best year of our lives, because we lost not just Prince, but another extremely close friend that year. But in between those two losses, we had our first child. And that's an incredible life-changing event. So it was heartbreaking and devastating. And, especially still as young, we're 26, our life experience basically for our entire marriage was Prince. And we got used to a certain rhythm and routine living around the corner from Paisley next to him. And, we had so many conversations with him about starting a family and his involvement in, at the time, just we had the one, but his involvement in her life as the uncle. And he was like, what do we do? Should we start a school for her? Like, how are we doing this? Like, it was very much this is our baby situation. But then all of a sudden, so many of the things that we felt were concrete in our lives all were not. And very quickly became quicksand. And so we had to adjust and just figure things out. And again, like I said earlier, we're very prayerful people. And so we felt like at that point, God was telling us to pack up, leave the home, and go back to Illinois and be closer to family, because we both have family in Illinois. And so we did that for a couple years, and eventually felt called back to Minnesota, because it just very quickly became home for us after our experiences with Prince, and we just love it out here. But yeah, it was a really tough time. 2016 was it was a roller coaster of a year that we did not expect, but on the other side of it, yeah, it's still hard. Every day we talk about him often and we miss him. Joshua was just telling me how he missed him this week. So he's still very much Uncle Prince in our home. The kids know the music, they know him, and we talk about Uncle Prince. We got dance parties and all the things. So he's very much alive and well in our home, but we do miss him. We miss him more than words can say. More than words can say, for many reasons. So, yeah.
That really warms my heart. Sorry, Kira, that
No.
just the fact that Prince was like, yeah, we're going to have a baby, because that's
Yes.
totally the opposite of how you would think that someone on that level would think,
Yeah. No, it definitely was such a sweet time. And like those conversations were really precious. And he was really protective even of me. There were a couple times, because at that point we weren't rehearsing. He was doing his piano and a microphone tour, the solo tour. And so Third Eye Girl, we weren't rehearsing and working once I think our last gig was the White House gig and those Washington gigs in June of 2015. Then we took a break for rest, and I was pregnant October, November of 2015. But because we lived out here, Joshua and Prince still worked together frequently in the studio, and we would all go out to eat, have dinner at different places. And there was like a couple times where Prince uh was just so protective over me being pregnant. And we went to the movies one night, late at night, and it was cold. And so I was like running into the theater through the parking lot. And he was like, Hannah, stop running. And there was another time where I was like, look, if we're gonna be staying out and we're going somewhere else after this, I'm gonna need a coffee because I'm tired. And he was like, no, the baby can't have coffee. No coffee for you. And so he was just very, very protective, very excited. I remember at his memorial at Paisley, so many people came up to us saying Prince was so excited about this baby. Prince called me as soon as you told him that you guys were expecting. He called me and said, Josh and Hannah are having a baby. And like so many people came up to us, and we didn't know that he was calling people and talking about Azaria. We just knew the conversations we had with him. But to hear that he was also making his own phone calls like it was his pregnancy announcement was just really sweet. Even at the memorial, it was a really sweet moment.
Thank you for sharing all of that with us. It's so wonderful to hear he had that reaction.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, did you always know you wanted to be a mum? And can you tell us about the first time you discovered you were pregnant?
Yes. Yes, I always wanted to be a mom. I knew it. I am just such a lover and a nurturer, and I love for just like people around me to feel loved and just seen and cared for. But yeah, I always knew I wanted to be a mom. And when Joshua and I got married at 21, our initial sort of agreement was like, let's just be married for a couple years because we still are only 21. We don't need to start a family right away. We've got time. So it was like, get married, take a couple years, establish our careers a little more, be husband and wife for a little bit, and then we can have a baby 2 years in. Well, we started working with Prince 9 months into our marriage. And so at that point, 2 years in we were touring and traveling, and we definitely knew like this isn't the time. And so our timeline got pushed back a little bit, but that's why it's like we just are fully trusting God and his plans for our lives versus our own. Because if it would have gone the way we had initially thought, it wouldn't have been as cool, I don't think. So when it was like, let's see, I got pregnant in 2015, the end of the year. I think it may have been early 2015. I was starting to get this crazy, like, desire to like have a baby. And it was starting to really just affect my focus and my emotions. And I just knew, I was like, I need a baby. And this was while we were working with Prince. Like I was like, yes, I want to be here. Yes, I want to tour. Yes, I want to play and work. And I'm having the time of my life with y'all. But like, I remember having honestly some really tough conversations, wanting to have more of a solidified work schedule, tour schedule, because I wanted to know when we could start planning our family, because it was just this thing. I just knew it was time. I knew it was getting close, but I didn't know specifically how it was going to work. And so the way that it worked out perfectly. But we had started trying after prayer. We both felt like September was our month. And so that's when we started trying to have a baby of 2015. And, I felt so let down after like I would take a pregnancy test and it didn't work. Cause especially with the first one, you don't necessarily think it's not going to happen the very first time. You just don't. At least I didn't. I was very maybe naive, but September, did it, took a pregnancy test, negative. October comes, took a pregnancy test, negative. Even early November, like I remember I took so many pregnancy tests, just trying to time it with all the different, factors at play. And after so many pregnancy tests, I was like, oh, this is hard. This is so hard to be excited about starting a family, but then to be let down with every pregnancy test. And then you get the butterflies in your stomach, and you don't want to go into it like negatively or let down, but it's just like, it's tough to get that negative test time and time again. And so I remember we were actually in Illinois. So at this point, we still lived in Minnesota. It was November, but for Thanksgiving, we traveled back to Illinois to be with family for Thanksgiving. And so we were in the hotel, and I remember waking up, and God just told, like, he said, take a pregnancy test. I woke up with this thought, like, Joshua was still asleep. My eyes weren't even open yet. Consciousness came to my body, and he said, take a pregnancy test. And it just turned out that I had one left over in my suitcase for whatever reason. I have no idea why there was a pregnancy test there. Went, took it, sat in the bathroom, hands shaking, heart pounding. And that one was the one. And so I broke down and just cried in the bathroom before I told Joshua. And I went and just like shook him up, and I was like, babe. So we immediately like go to Walmart and get more tests to take them and confirm it. And he's like, wiping eye boogers out of his eyes. And I totally had all these plans to tell him in a really cute way. And then when the moment came, it was totally obnoxious. I didn't give him any time to wake up. And that was it. We were home in Illinois for Thanksgiving break or holiday, and I just took a test early in the morning one morning and found out that I was pregnant. And it worked out perfectly because we were able to tell our family in person because we were there. At least some of our family. I still have a lot of family in Kentucky, but a lot of our family we were able to share the moment with in person. So it was really sweet.
Oh, it's lovely.
You kind of worked out a plan then, like with Prince, of how that would work.
So no, not necessarily. So there were a lot of conversations where it was like, yes, we want a tour, but yes, we also want to start a family. Can we plan a tour? Because Prince was notorious for spontaneity. So he didn't like to plan an entire tour and release tour dates and have it all be promoted and stuff ahead of time. Like the hit and run tours that we did, where we showed up in a city, announced where we were playing that night or the night after, that was legit how we were living too. It wasn't like a facade or a gimmick. We literally didn't know where we would be. Now, the arena hit and run shows were a little bit more planned, just because when you're selling arena tickets, it's got to have a little bit of, there's got to be a little bit of that safety net there, I guess I would say, for promoting arena shows so that people have time to get tickets and all of that, and to book out the arena. But even still, that was as last minute as it could be for arena shows. And when we were I think we were in Amsterdam. This is just an example. But we were in Amsterdam. Prince calls our hotel. Joshua answers. He calls our room. Hello. Prince says, you guys want to go to Portugal? Yeah, let's go. And this is why, with flying with Third Eye Girl and being on tour, we would laugh just between our small group, me, Donna, Ida, and then the two husbands. We would have like 20 full-size suitcases that we were checking between the five of us, because we literally would just pack all the clothes, all the shoes, all the hair stuff, everything, because we just didn't know how long we were going to be out on the road. That was like a legit, that was our lifestyle. And so when you start thinking about, okay, I want to get pregnant, but I've never played the drums pregnant because I've never been pregnant. What are you have these questions like, is it safe to play drums while pregnant because it's such a physical job? Then you have the factor of, what about the noise and the decibel levels consistently throughout an entire pregnancy and being on the road? There's all these factors that you don't necessarily think about until that time comes. And what I didn't want to happen was we start trying to have a family, but we're also still traveling. And then all of a sudden I get pregnant, and what happens? We have to cancel shows. Do we stop touring? And so I was trying to work around that, and the timing just kind of worked out perfectly where we were already resting with Third Eye Girl. And so Prince was doing his solo and a microphone, or piano and a microphone tour, and that's when I got pregnant. And so it was all just like serendipitous. The timing was perfect. And him and Joshua were still working together. So it was the perfect time for me to rest and have the baby while him and Joshua were still doing stuff. And then, we would sort of like regroup and revisit the touring and stuff like that once the baby was born. But then, he passed. And so everything changed.
Having it all. What does that mean to you? And do you think it's possible?
I heard one of my favorite ministers. She's incredible. Lisa Bevere. I heard her say this, like, we can have it all, but just maybe not have it all at the same time. And so I think everything has its season. Everything has its time and place. Another thing that she says, the right thing in the wrong season is the wrong thing. And so that is how I see it. Yes, we can have it all. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean we won't have sacrifices to make as well to be able to have it all. Because I think having it all, if we think about it just in terms of life, all looks differently depending on the season too. I think for me, I did have it all when I was 22, happily married with the love of my life, working together, touring the world with Prince, flying in private jets, going to the Grammys, going to the Golden Globes, staying in crazy hotels, getting paid buku dollars to perform in front of tens of thousands of people. Yeah, I would say for a 22-year-old girl, that's having it all until it's not all of a sudden. And then I want something different. What does having it all look like now? After that season, it was having it all meant I needed a baby. I wanted to create life with my husband. And then I had it all in that season. But then all of a sudden, some years go by, we've got 3 kids, and all of a sudden that's not all anymore. There's more. And so I think, yes, we can have it all. I think it ultimately needs to be in wisdom and not out of selfish desire as much as it's a more well-rounded perspective of what does all look like for me and the people I love in this season. And also making sure that in pursuit of having it all, being able to check ourselves and be real with ourselves when enough is enough and not be too overzealous for gimme, gimme, gimme. I think being able to slow things down in our pursuit of all is really important, and to be able to balance our health and joy and happiness with our pursuit of more. And that can get really unhealthy really fast. So we've got to make sure that we have accountability around us. My husband is incredible for that, so that people say, hey, I know this is important to you and I don't want to stop you, but I also want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and you're not putting too much on your plate all at once. And so I think, yeah, we can have it all, but I also think that that looks differently depending on which version of us we ask and which season. And so it just takes a lot of maturity and being able to kind of step outside of self to say, okay, what does that look like right now? Make your list. I love making lists and being realistic with our goals so we don't run ourselves too thin. And then ultimately, what's it for? Why do you want it all if it's making you unhealthy and miserable? So being able to define that in a healthy manner, I think, is really important. But for me in this season, man, and honestly, I know I say it a lot, but it's all got to be rooted in something bigger than yourself and outside of self. And so for me, all is just, it's God first and foremost. He fulfills me beyond anything else, beyond anything that I could do for myself or someone else could do for me. I have to be, and I am completely satisfied in Jesus. And that is a very real, authentic place for me. And it's a place that I had to get to, because when I was trying to fulfill it and find it in other areas, it never worked. It worked maybe for a little bit until it didn't anymore. And I had to find complete satisfaction and rest in God. And then He adds to my life through all the other variables, all the other relationships, the healthy relationships, and my children and the drums. I see everything now through a totally different lens. And I'm satisfied. I'm satisfied. My career doesn't look like it did 8 years ago, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, at what a lot of people would claim was, your prime back in, somebody said that to me the other day, back in your prime. And I was like, I'm only 34. Don't talk about back in my prime. But I had to actually fight that myself too, because my career today does not look anywhere near as successful, as glamorous, or amazing as it did back then. But it also depends on the lens you're looking through. And Christ helped fix my lens. And He healed me from a lot of that stuff. So that's what I would have to say on that.
I really love hearing what you say about seasons, because you probably have the same feeling too, as we've discussed with other guests as well. This thing of being a mother, being a drummer, you have to put your drumming on the back burner while you have children. And I personally still really struggle with that some days, but a reel that you posted talking about exactly that with seasons helped me so much. And I really think about that when I'm having a moment. I think seasons and the seasons change.
Yes.
So thank you, because that is really, really valuable.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. I think I know exactly what you're talking about, because a question that I've had a lot recently is how do you find time? And I don't. I don't find it. I have to fight for it. I have to make it. And it's got to be an intentional decision and a commitment. There are a lot of days when I'll schedule practice time with Joshua, which it's a blessing because we both work from home, and so we have some flexibility in our schedules. But there's times where, like, I'll block out time for me to play the drums, and then the time comes and I don't want to. I would rather snuggle my babies. Like, honestly, I would rather just sit on the couch and watch Miss Rachel again for the bajillionth time and snuggle my babies. But it's about that commitment. I have to fight for this time. If I let this time go, even my workout time, my prayer time, my alone time, if I let this time go, I know without a shadow of a doubt, I'm gonna wish I had taken it in the future. And so again, it's just about, yeah, we can have it all, but understand your season, know the season that you're in, and that it is temporary, because seasons change. And so there's got to be a little bit of grace that we give ourselves.
Yes. Yes. Everyone listen up. So I wanted to ask you, you mentioned it earlier on, about maybe this feeling of imposter syndrome, being unsure. So I wanted to ask you a bit more about that, if you could speak on that, and if you had any like identity shifts through this whole process of motherhood.
100%. What's really interesting is when this concept of imposter syndrome, I guess, came into the mainstream conversation, I had a hard time sort of understanding it, because for the majority of my life, I've always been a what you see is what you get kind of girl. I have to be true to myself, true to my beliefs and convictions. I am honest. So I never felt like I was in this place where I had struggled with imposter syndrome, or I had to be someone else. It was just like, okay, if I'm not for you, that's fine. Like, we can just part ways. I actually encountered imposter syndrome for the first time like last year. And through this process with Back to Basics, as I have started to get more serious about my career again, because I started the whole process trying to be the 22-year-old girl with no kids at the height of her career. And it wasn't working. And so there were many a times where we were recording these episodes and I was just crying or extremely frustrated because I was trying to find myself and who I am now and the lessons that I've learned in the identity of the 22-year-old girl who had not lived my lived experience. And so I realized I was struggling with imposter syndrome that I was putting on myself to be myself from a decade ago. And so that was my experience with imposter syndrome, is trying to be who my public persona, I guess, last was, and it just wasn't working. And I kept struggling and falling into, I can't be that girl. Like, she was really cool and I love her. And she experienced some amazing things, but like, I'm also really cool now. And I think it's really cool to carry and deliver and raise kids and to be married now for 14 years and, have more life under your belt and more maturity and wisdom and more vision for your life, because there's more at stake and you want to give more and do more because of your kids. And you also realize now that you have kids that you want to be the type of person to others, the type of person that you want someone to be for your kids, so there's this new type of desire to give back to people and feed people in a positive way, spiritually, physically, emotionally, because I want people to do that for my kids, and so there's just so much more to me now that I have to tap into authentically. And so that's what Back to Basics also is that sort of reintroduction to myself, first and foremost, rediscovering, like, why do I love the drums? Why do I want to do this? Yes, the drums served me in a prior season, but what is it like? What are we going to do now and why? What does it mean? What's the purpose behind it? And who am I? What am I bringing to this that is authentic and not me trying to continue to be this young girl anymore?
You have any other drummer mamas that you are able to talk to about this kind of stuff, or musician friends?
Let me think before I speak too fast. Well, musician moms, yes. Donna from Third Eye Girl, guitar player, killer. She has 2 boys now. And then I do have like other mom friends that aren't necessarily musicians, but are just creatives or can relate to that in some form or fashion. But drummer mamas, none that I can think of right now. You guys.
Well, now you have us.
Yeah, but no, pretty tight circle over here. And if I miss somebody, please don't come for me. I'm so sorry. It's because I don't love you. But right now I'm just drawing a blank.
What's coming up for you in 2025? Tell us all about it.
Not babies. I'll tell you that much. Done. No. Honestly, we have a lot of exciting things in the works. Lots of cool conversations have been happening lately that I don't necessarily want to speak on too soon, but there's possibly a drum festival, maybe a couple different festivals and like clinic performances. But definitely more content, more posting. I am really becoming a student all over again when it comes to this side of the industry. Because like I said, it was very different when I was coming up. And by the time I hit with Prince, that's kind of when social media blew up, and I didn't necessarily have the time to really dive into that because I was working with him. And so I am learning all over again the full-time job that it is to collect content, record it, brainstorm it, edit it, post it, have a routine schedule. So I know for sure for me, I'm going to be diving into that world a lot more just on the back end. But also more music, more videos, possibly another another docu-lesson vibe. But I think one thing that we've learned throughout all of this, starting from when we worked with Prince, is that we don't like to put too much pressure on what are we doing? Here's the timeline. Boom, boom, boom. Like Prince was very much a be in the now, be in the moment. Let's not get carried away with what's to come. Let's also not harp on what is in the past. It's done and over. We can't change it. So let's be present in the moment. And right now, especially with young kids, I am fully committed to being present in the moment. And I'm vision casting for sure. I'm dreaming and I have aspirations, but I'm also not so hyper focused on, I need to get out there, I need to work, I need to go here and do this and meet that person. I am wholly trusting God and also continuing to be faithful over what I have in the now and be present with my family. And so what I know for sure is more content, and I've been having fun with the content and writing and recording and all those things. And then, just kind of taking each day as it comes.
All right. We wondered if you watch Bluey, the cartoon.
You know what? It's crazy. We have not crossed over so much into Bluey, but I have seen, we do a lot of, like, we did Cocomelon for a really long time. And then Miss Rachel has been like massive in our home. And now we've kind of been circulating a lot of Danny Go. Do you guys know about Danny Go?
No,
No.
I don't know Danny Go.
Danny Go. Okay, what about Blippi?
Oh, Blippy,
Yes, I know
yeah.
Blippi, yeah.
Blippy he's like
Blippi. Yes.
ingrained.
So Blippi goes hard, but Danny Go, I feel like if you've jived with Blippi a little bit, you might even like Danny Go more because you can tell he's musically inclined. And so his songs, even though he's teaching lessons in his songs, the songs bop. Like they go hard. And so me and the kids we'll be having our dance parties singing about like brushing your teeth and taking the garbage out. And it's so Danny Go is kind of a big one right now because he hits from our 8-year-old all the way down to the 8-month-old. And so yeah, that's a thing. I've seen though clips of Bluey where it's like, dude, they're touching on some like real emotional things, right? Like I've seen parents talking about Bluey on TikTok and we just haven't watched it.
You have to do that. That's
okay.
And message
put everything
us.
else aside, yes, and then tell us your favorite episode.
Thank you so much. Sorry. Thank you for your time and sharing, and it's been really, really lovely to meet you. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you, ladies. Thank you for the invite. I'm so glad we were able to like lock this down and make it happen. And also thank you for the awareness that you're bringing around drums and mothers. We don't hear that conversation a lot about just like parenting and being a drummer and what that balance looks like and the different things. Honestly, we could dive so much more into that specifically. There's so many layers to it, but I just wanted to thank you for this platform and raising awareness around this type of conversation because I think it's really important for us to all connect regarding just what happens, the changes that happen in life and the time that we do have to take away from maybe it was our first passion, the drums, to be really great at raising our kids and how to blend those worlds together and have a fulfilled life, not feeling like you're leaving yourself behind, but just kind of letting it all happen organically and not sacrifice your identity in the midst of it all. It's so important. And so I just want to thank you for this platform. Thank you for the conversation, and hopefully it's not the last. And I hope that people are really blessed by the conversation as well, and that your listeners take something really tangible away from this.
Thank you. I think they will, because you have basically just summed up everything in that. It was amazing. We couldn't have even given you a better script. That was
oh my gosh,
wonderful.
And thank you for doing what you're doing. Lastly, it's so valid and it's so needed. So thank you for being honest and doing that work and putting it out there because people need to hear it.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm really excited just to see what's to come, you know?
Thanks for listening to the Drummer Mamas podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We appreciate every like, share, rating or review. You really do make a difference. We'd also love to hear from you if you have suggestions about topics or guests. See you next time.